The African lady dares to talk back at a Korean mafia.
You scare
You
me.
think you scare me? The entire restaurant went silent. Every eye turned to the African woman standing behind the counter, her hands still wet from washing dishes, staring down the most feared man in Seoul. Jin Ho-Seok's bodyguards reached for their weapons. Customers dove under tables. The sound of chairs scraping against tile echoed through the sudden stillness. But Zara Imani didn't move an inch. She didn't even blink. "I asked you a question," she said, louder this time, her Nigerian accent cutting through the tension like a blade. "Do you think you scare me?" Ho-Seok tilted his head, a cold smile spreading across his face. In 20 years of ruling Seoul's underworld, no one had ever spoken to him like this. Politicians trembled when he entered a room. Business owners paid protection money without being asked twice. Even other crime families kept their distance, knowing that crossing Jin Ho-Seok meant death, swift, brutal and certain. And yet here stood some cafe owner who'd been in the city less than a year, talking to him like he was nothing more than an annoying customer. "What's your name?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge that made his bodyguards tense. "The name's on the door. You can read, can't you?" His men gasped. One of them, a thick-necked enforcer named Kong, stepped forward, hand on his gun. "You dare." Ho-Seok raised his hand, stopping him mid-sentence. The gesture was small, almost casual, but it carried absolute authority. Kong froze instantly. "Everyone out," Ho-Seok commanded, his eyes never leaving Zara's face. "Except her." The customers didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled for the exit, some leaving money on tables, others abandoning their meals entirely. Within 30 seconds, the cafe was empty except for Zara, Ho-Seok, and his 6 bodyguards. "I said everyone," Ho-Seok repeated, this time looking at his men. They hesitated, clearly uncomfortable leaving their boss alone with this unpredictable woman. But orders were orders. They filed out, though Kong lingered at the door, hand still near his weapon. When the door finally closed, the silence was deafening. 3 weeks earlier, Zara had scrubbed the graffiti off her cafe door for the 3rd time that month. The paint remover stung her hands, and the morning sun beat down on her back as she worked. But she didn't stop until every last trace of the hateful message was gone. Africans go home. Simple. Direct. Meant to hurt. She'd stopped reporting it to the police after the first time, when Officer Kim had barely written down her complaint before shooing her away with vague promises of looking into it. The second time, a different officer had suggested, with barely concealed contempt, that maybe she should consider the cultural differences and whether running a business in this neighborhood was appropriate. Appropriate. As if her existence required permission. But she wasn't going anywhere. This Café Imani's Fusion was everything she worked for since leaving Lagos 5 years ago. Every table had been purchased with money from double shifts at 3 different restaurants where she'd endured harassment from customers and discrimination from managers. Every chair represented a week of sleeping on a friend's couch, saving every one. Every recipe had been perfected through countless late nights, blending the flavors of her West African childhood with the ingredients she could find in Seoul's markets. The morning sun caught the gold lettering on the window. Imani's Fusion African Soul Food with a Korean Heart. She designed that slogan herself after weeks of deliberation, hoping it would bridge the gap between her heritage and her adopted home. Hoping it would show customers that fusion wasn't about choosing one culture over another, but celebrating both. Inside, the cafe reflected that philosophy. Hand-woven kente cloth from Ghana draped across one wall, while traditional Korean pojagi patchwork adorned another. Her menu offered jollof rice alongside kimchi fried rice, suya spiced with gochugaru, and plantains served with doenjang dipping sauce. She'd created something unique, something that told the story of her journey. "Miss Zara," her young employee Minjun called from inside, his voice tight with anxiety. "There's a man here. He says he wants to talk to you about protection." Zara's stomach dropped. She knew exactly what that meant. In Seoul's Itaewon district, there was only one organization that offered protection, and it wasn't the kind that kept you safe. It was the kind that threatened you if you didn't pay. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked inside, past the carefully arranged tables with their colorful African textiles serving as tablecloths, past the wall where she'd hung photographs of Lagos markets and Korean street scenes side by side, past the small stage where she'd planned to host live music once business picked up enough to afford it. A man in an expensive Italian suit sat at her best table, the one by the window with the hand-carved legs she'd found at an antique market in Insadong. She'd paid too much for it, but she'd loved the craftsmanship, the way the wood grain told its own story. He had a briefcase open in front of him, papers spread out like he owned the place, a pen dancing between his fingers with practiced ease. "Zara Imani?" he said without looking up, making notes on a ledger with the casual authority of someone who did this daily. "Beautiful place. Authentic decor. Good location. Prime real estate in Itaewon. Be a shame if something happened to it. Get out." He finally looked at her, surprise flickering across his face before it hardened into professional irritation. "Excuse me. I said get out. I don't pay protection money. Not to you, not to anyone." The man stood slowly, his pleasant expression melting away like sugar in hot water, revealing something uglier underneath. He was tall, probably in his 40s, with the kind of face that had learned to smile while delivering threats. His suit was tailored, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, his watch worth more than her monthly revenue. Everything about him screamed money and power and the assumption that both could buy anything. "Miss Imani, I don't think you understand how things work here. Everyone in Itaewon pays. The Korean restaurants pay. The Japanese restaurants pay. The American bars pay. The Chinese takeout places, the Vietnamese pho shops, even the halal food carts on the corner. Everyone. What makes you think you're special?" Zara walked to the door and held it open, her hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Because I didn't survive what I survived to let some thug in a suit take what's mine. Now leave before I throw you out myself." The man's laugh was cold, devoid of genuine humor. It was the laugh of someone who'd heard empty threats before and knew exactly how they ended. "You? Throw me out." He looked her up and down, 5 feet 6 inches of slender African woman in a flower-dusted apron. "I'd like to see you try. Would you?" Zara's voice dropped, taking on a quality that made Min-jun, watching nervously from the kitchen doorway, shiver. There was something in her tone, something hard and dangerous and utterly serious, that didn't match the cafe owner image. "Because I promise you, I've dealt with worse than you. Much worse. Men with guns and machetes and no conscience at all. Men who would eat you alive and pick their teeth with your bones. So either walk out that door on your own 2 feet, or I'll help you out. Your choice." For a moment, something like doubt crossed the man's face. There was something in her eyes, something hard and unflinching and dangerous, that didn't match the cafe owner image. A predator's gaze hidden behind the mask of domesticity. But then his professional mask slipped back into place, fortified by years of successful intimidation. "You just made a very big mistake, Miss Imani. A very big mistake." He collected his papers with deliberate care, closed his briefcase with a click that sounded like a cell door slamming, and walked to the door. He paused in the doorway, silhouetted against the morning light. "We'll be in touch." After he left, Min-jun rushed over, his face pale with fear. "Miss Zara, do you know who that was?" "That was Lee Dong-hyun. He collects for the Jin family. They control everything in this district. Everything. The bars, the clubs, the restaurants, even some of the police stations. My cousin works for them. He says they have connections all the way to City Hall." Zara locked the door and flipped the sign to closed, even though it was only mid-morning and she couldn't afford to lose the lunch rush. Her hands were shaking now that the confrontation was over, adrenaline draining away and leaving behind cold reality. But her voice remained steady. "Then I guess we're about to find out just how much control they really have." "But Miss Zara." "Min-jun." She turned to face him, her expression softening. The boy was only 22, working his way through university, sending money home to his mother in Daegu. He'd come to her 3 months ago, desperate for work after being rejected from 20 other establishments because of his lack of experience. She'd hired him on the spot, seeing something of her younger self in his determination. "I know you're scared. If you want to quit, I understand. I'll give you a good reference, help you find another job, even pay you through the end of the month. But I'm not backing down. I can't." The young man looked torn, fear warring with loyalty across his expressive face. His hands twisted in his apron, and she could see him mentally calculating the risks. Finally, he shook his head with a conviction that surprised them both. My sister says I should quit. My mother says I should quit. Hell, I say I should quit. But you gave me a job when no one else would. You trusted me with responsibilities on my first day. You helped me study for my exams during slow hours. So I'm staying. Zara felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly, meaning it more than he could possibly know. What she didn't tell Min-jun was that she'd been waiting for this confrontation since she'd opened the cafe 6 months ago. She'd known it would come eventually. In every city she'd worked in, Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, Bangkok, there were always men who thought they could take what they wanted through fear. Men who believed power came from the barrel of a gun or the threat of violence. And Zara Imani had stopped being afraid of men like that a long time ago. The attacks started small, almost petty in their execution but devastating in their cumulative effect. Her morning supplier, a kind ajumma named Mrs. Choi who'd provided fresh vegetables for the past 4 months, called apologetically the next morning to say she couldn't deliver anymore. Mrs. Choi, what happened? Was there a problem with payment? Quality? I can. No, nothing like that. The older woman's voice dropped to a whisper, heavy with regret and fear. Your food is delicious, Zara. Everyone says so. But someone came to my shop yesterday afternoon. 2 men in suits. They didn't threaten me directly, but they said I shouldn't do business with certain people. They knew my granddaughter's school. They knew where my son works. They knew everything. I'm sorry, Zara. I have grandchildren. You understand. Zara understood perfectly. It's okay, Mrs. Choi. I don't blame you. Stay safe. Her meat supplier followed the next day with an almost identical story. Then her rice distributor. Then the man who brought her plantains from the international market. Within a week, every supplier who'd been reliably delivering to her cafe suddenly had excuses, all delivered with the same apologetic tone and the same underlying message. We're sorry, but we're more afraid of them than we are loyal to you. Zara switched to buying from the large markets, paying premium prices and hauling heavy bags herself on the subway because she could no longer afford taxi rides. Cut into her already slim profit margins, but she managed. She'd learned in Lagos how to stretch a one until it screamed, how to make something from nothing, how to survive on pure stubbornness when common sense said to quit. Then her delivery trucks started getting delayed. A shipment of specialty spices from Nigeria, ordered 3 months in advance for a planned menu expansion, paid for upfront with money she'd saved for months, vanished somewhere between the port and her cafe. The shipping company offered elaborate apologies but no compensation, citing standard insurance exclusions, in fine print she'd never noticed. $2,000 gone just like that. Health inspectors showed up 3 times in 1 week, examining every corner of her kitchen with microscopes and bad attitudes. They poked into corners that hadn't been inspected since the cafe opened, ran white-gloved fingers over surfaces that were spotless, and somehow found violations that didn't exist. A supposedly loose tile that was perfectly secure, verified by the contractor she'd hired. A concerning odor that no one else could smell, not even the inspector's own partner who'd rolled his eyes at the claim. Improper food storage that had been done exactly to code, photographed and verified by the city health department just 2 months prior. Each inspection came with a fine. Each fine was precisely calculated to be just small enough that fighting it would cost more in legal fees and lost business than simply paying it. 50,000 one here, 70,000 there. Death by 1,000 small cuts, designed to bleed her dry without giving her grounds for a lawsuit. Zara paid each fine, documented everything with photographs and receipts, and kept fighting. But at night, alone in her small apartment, she ran the numbers and watched her savings evaporate like morning dew. The neighborhood started to notice. The Korean restaurant owner next door, an older man named Mr. Park who'd always been friendly, who'd helped her navigate the local business association, and taught her key phrases in Seoul dialect, stopped making eye contact when they passed on the street. His son, who used to wave enthusiastically, now pulled his father in the opposite direction when he saw her coming. The convenience store clerk who used to chat with her in broken English about K-dramas and Nigerian movies now served her in silence, nervously glancing at the door as if expecting someone to burst in and catch him fraternizing with the enemy. Even her regular customers, A small but loyal group of expats and adventurous Koreans who genuinely loved her food started making excuses. Sorry, Zara, I'm traveling for work. My doctor says I need to cut back on spicy food. I'm on a diet. All delivered with eyes that wouldn't quite meet hers, apologies that rang hollow. Fear was contagious, Zara had learned. It spread like a virus, invisible but deadly, turning friends into strangers and allies into ghosts. And someone was deliberately spreading it, systematically isolating her, cutting off every avenue of support until she stood alone. 2 weeks after the man in the suit had visited, Zara arrived at her café to find the windows intact but the door lock broken. The jamb was splintered where someone had forced it open, probably with a crowbar or pry bar. Inside, nothing was stolen. Her cash register was untouched, her equipment unmoved, but everything had been slightly disturbed. Chairs sat at wrong angles, just a few degrees off from where she always positioned them. Pictures on the wall hung crooked, tilted just enough to be noticeable. Ingredients in the kitchen had been rearranged, salt where sugar should be, flour mixed with rice. Her carefully organized spice cabinet, alphabetized and color-coded, had been deliberately scrambled. It was psychological warfare, designed to make her feel violated and vulnerable. A message written in displacement and disorder. We can get in whenever we want. Nowhere is safe. She called a locksmith, paid 400,000 won for a better lock and deadbolt that the locksmith solemnly assured her was the best money can buy, and installed security cameras with money she'd been saving for new kitchen equipment. The next night, someone slashed all 4 tires on her car. A beat-up Hyundai she'd bought third-hand but maintained meticulously. 400,000 won in replacement tires, plus the cost of a tow truck because of course it happened in a tow-away zone. The night after that, they spray-painted crude threats across her café's exterior wall in dripping red paint that looked disturbingly like blood. Go home, die African bitch, last warning. 200,000 won to have it professionally cleaned before it stained the brick permanently. The night after that, they broke 3 windows with rocks, each one precisely targeted at her hand-painted menu boards, destroying hours of careful calligraphy. 300,000 won in replacement glass. Each incident was reported to the police. Each time, officers took notes with barely concealed boredom and promised to investigate. Nothing ever came of it. When she pressed Officer Kim, the same one who dismissed her first graffiti complaint, he shrugged and said, "Crime happens, Miss Imani. Maybe this neighborhood isn't right for your business." The subtext was clear. Pay up or get out. Those were her only options according to everyone. But Zara Imani had survived things that would have broken most people. She'd watched friends die in Lagos. She'd infiltrated organizations that skinned informants alive. She'd learned to smile while planning someone's downfall, to laugh while gathering evidence that would destroy entire networks. A few broken windows and some spray paint weren't going to make her run. Customers stopped coming entirely, too afraid to be associated with a business that had clearly angered the wrong people. Her lunch rush dwindled from 30 people to 5, then to 2, then to none. Some days, only Minjun's loyalty kept the cafe from being completely empty, and even he arrived earlier and left later to avoid being seen during peak hours. "Miss Zara," he said one evening as they cleaned up yet another mess. Broken bottles this time, thrown through the front window along with a brick that had narrowly missed his head. "Maybe you should just pay them. It's not worth all this. My cousin says if you just pay the protection money, all of this stops. You can go back to running your business. Isn't peace worth a few 100,000 won a month?" "It's worth everything," Zara replied, sweeping glass with methodical precision, each stroke of the broom deliberate and controlled. "The moment I pay, I'm admitting they own me. That I'm not a business owner but a tenant in my own establishment. That my dreams, my work, my future, all of it can be bought and sold by men who contribute nothing but fear. And no one owns me. Not anymore. Never again." There was something in the way she said it, a weight of history, of trauma survived and overcome, of lines drawn in blood that could never be uncrossed, that made Minjun stop arguing. He'd learned over the months that Miss Zara had layers, depths that she kept hidden beneath the cheerful cafe owner exterior. Sometimes, late at night when she thought no one was watching, he'd catch her staring into space with eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine. What the Mafia didn't know, what no one in Seoul knew except a handful of people scattered across 3 continents, was that before opening her café, Zara Imani had lived an entirely different life. Before the colorful tablecloths and fusion recipes, before the smiles and the carefully crafted dream of a small business owner, before the persona of the cheerful immigrant chasing her dream, Zara had been someone else entirely. She'd been Zara Okoro, operative for an organization that didn't appear on any government roster. An organization funded by a coalition of African nations tired of watching their citizens disappear into trafficking networks, while international law enforcement did nothing. An organization that worked in the shadows, using methods that would never hold up in court but got results when courts were bought and police were corrupted. She'd infiltrated trafficking rings across West Africa, posed as everything from a businesswoman to a prostitute to a corrupt official's mistress to get close to her targets. She'd gathered intelligence that took down networks spanning 5 countries, rescued hundreds of victims, eliminated targets that the official channels couldn't touch. She'd learned to fight in Lagos slums where survival was never guaranteed and every day was a test. She'd learned to disappear in Kinshasa where asking the wrong questions got you killed slowly and publicly as a warning to others. She'd learned to manipulate, seduce, intimidate, and when absolutely necessary, eliminate threats with clinical efficiency. She'd been one of the best, moving through criminal underworlds like a ghost, trusted by people who trusted no one, feared by those smart enough to sense the danger beneath her cover identities. Until Lagos broke her. Until she and her partner, a man named Chike who'd recruited her, trained her, become like a brother to her, infiltrated a trafficking ring that was kidnapping girls from Nigerian universities and shipping them to Europe and the Middle East. They'd been so close to taking down the entire operation, had evidence that would have exposed 3 government ministers and a dozen police commanders. But someone had leaked their identities. Someone inside their own organization, they later learned, who'd been bought for a price that made betrayal worthwhile. The traffickers had ambushed them in a warehouse on the Lagos docks, made Zara watch while they tortured Chike for information, made her listen to his screams while they broke his fingers one by one, burned him with cigarettes, cut shallow slices that bled but didn't kill. And when he wouldn't talk, when he kept insisting he was just a journalist just researching a story, please stop, they'd shot him in the head. Casual. Easy. Like swatting a fly. Then they'd let her go. Run, the leader had said. A man named Okafor with gold teeth and dead eyes. Run back to whoever sent you. Tell them this business is untouchable. Tell them what happens to people who interfere. And if we ever see you again, we won't be so merciful. So she'd run. Changed her name from Zara Okoro to Zara Imani. Left Africa entirely, unable to look at familiar streets without seeing Chike's blood, without hearing his screams. Bounced through Asia for 3 years, working restaurant jobs under fake papers, learning languages, trying to forget the blood and the screaming and the way Chike's eyes had gone empty, while she held him and lied that help was coming. She'd settled in Seoul because it was far from everything she'd known. Because Korean was hard enough that learning it required all her focus, leaving no room for memories. She'd opened a café because food was safe, simple, honest. Because cooking for people was the opposite of the violence she'd left behind. Because creating something beautiful felt like redemption. But old skills don't disappear. They just wait, dormant but ready, muscle memory that never truly fades. And Zara Imani was tired of running. Tired of pretending to be weak. Tired of letting fear dictate her choices. She made the call on a Tuesday evening, standing in her wrecked café, surrounded by broken glass and threats spray-painted on her walls. The insurance company had denied her claim. Pattern of repeated vandalism suggests insufficient security measures. And her bank account was nearly empty. The number belonged to a man she'd sworn she'd never contact again. A man named Kofi Mensah, who ran what he diplomatically called an information brokerage, out of Accra, Ghana. In reality, Kofi was a spider at the center of a web that stretched across 4 continents, trading secrets the way other people traded stocks. Government corruption, corporate espionage, criminal intelligence. If information had value, Kofi could find it, verify it, and sell it to the highest bidder. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice smooth and cultured with a British accent acquired during his Oxford education. The number you're calling from doesn't exist in my database, which is remarkable considering my database contains approximately 400 million phone numbers. Which means either you're a very stupid telemarketer who somehow acquired a ghost number, or you're someone interesting. Which is it? Kofi. It's Imani. A pause, then a low whistle. Zara Okoro. Back from the dead. I heard you were serving jollof rice in Korea now. How's the restaurant business treating you? Complicated. It always is with you, sister. She could hear the smile in his voice, along with something else. Concern, maybe, or curiosity. What do you need? Information on someone. Jin Ho-Seok, Seoul Mafia. Everything you have. Family, business, weaknesses, fears, secrets, the whole picture. I need to know him better than he knows himself. Another pause, longer this time. She could almost hear him thinking, calculating risks and rewards. Ho-Seok? Jin family? You're playing in dangerous waters, Imani. The Jin family has connections that go deep. Very deep. Political ties that reach the Blue House, business relationships with 3 of the largest chaebol, law enforcement relationships that make them functionally untouchable. Are you absolutely certain you want to poke that particular tiger? I didn't start this fight, Kofi. I'm just planning to finish it. Same old Zara. He sighed, but there was admiration in it. Always charging at windmills. It'll cost you. Information on someone like Ho-Seok doesn't come cheap. I'll need to activate contacts in Seoul, Tokyo, Hong Kong. Call in favors I've been saving. Cross-reference databases that aren't exactly legal to access. How much? He named a figure that made her wince. 3 months of her café's profits, back when she'd actually had profits. Her entire remaining savings, essentially. Fine. But I need it fast. 48 hours. I can do 24 if you pay double. Zara looked around her destroyed café. At the dreams lying shattered on the floor. At the choice between surrendering and fighting. Deal. Zara. His voice turned serious, dropping the professional broker persona. Whatever you're planning, be careful. The Jin family isn't like the groups we dealt with in Africa. They're sophisticated, connected, and utterly ruthless. They've been operating for 3 generations, survived government crackdowns, absorbed smaller organizations, eliminated competitors. They don't make mistakes. Don't underestimate them. I never underestimate anyone, Kofi. That's why I'm still alive. That's why we're both still alive. He paused. It's good to hear your voice again, even if you are about to do something incredibly dangerous. Would you expect anything less from me? Not for a second. I'll be in touch. She hung up and turned to find Minjun staring at her with wide eyes. He'd heard everything, and his expression was a mixture of fear and dawning realization. Miss Zara. Who are you? Really? She looked at this young man who'd stayed loyal when everyone else had abandoned her, who'd cleaned up broken glass and threats without complaining, who deserved better than to be caught in the crossfire of her past colliding with her present. Someone who used to be very good at finding people who didn't want to be found, she said simply. Someone who used to hunt monsters for a living. Someone who walked away from that life because the hunting was killing her soul. And someone who's about to remind the Jin family why I was good at my job. Are you? Are you some kind of spy? Was. Past tense. Now I'm just a cafe owner who's very, very tired of being pushed around. 23 hours later, Kofi had always been an overachiever. Zara received an encrypted email containing a file so comprehensive it took her 4 hours to read through completely, cross-referencing details and absorbing information that most people would need a week to process. Personal information. Born April 15, 1985, Seoul, South Korea. Second son of Jin Tae-won, deceased, and Park Mi-young, deceased. One older brother, Jin Ho-jin, status. Missing, presumed dead. One younger sister, Jin Ji-woo, deceased, suicide, 2004. Height. 183 centimeters. Weight. 79 kilograms. Blood type AB. No known allergies. Non-smoker. Social drinker. Maintains rigorous physical fitness routine. Mixed martial arts training 3 times weekly, running daily. Education. Seoul National University. Business administration. Dropped out after 1 year following father's death. Self-educated in economics, politics, and philosophy. Personal library contains over 3,000 volumes. Criminal profile. Took control of Jin family operations at age 22 after his father's death and brother's disappearance. Initial assumption was that he was too young, too educated, too soft to maintain control. proved everyone wrong within 6 months by consolidating power through strategic alliances and ruthless elimination of internal opposition. Built the family's empire from street-level protection rackets into a sophisticated network spanning legitimate businesses, real estate development, 37 properties, restaurants and nightclubs, 22 establishments, import, export, 3 major companies, a gray area operations, high-stakes gambling for underground casinos, loan sharking estimated 200-plus active loans, political lobbying, connections to 15 city council members, 3 provincial officials, illegal operations, protection rackets, estimated 400-plus businesses paying monthly fees, illegal gambling, underground fighting rings, estimated annual revenue, 50 to 70 billion won, $40 to $55 million USD. Psychological profile. Known for extreme intelligence and strategic thinking. Fluent in Korean, English, Japanese, and conversational Mandarin. Reads extensively philosophy, history, military strategy. Often quotes Sun Tzu and Machiavelli in business meetings. Leadership style. Rewards loyalty generously but punishes betrayal with extreme prejudice. Maintains strict code of conduct within organization. No unnecessary violence. No targeting civilians. No operations that attract excessive police attention. Reputation. Feared but also respected. Unlike many crime bosses, keeps promises and honors agreements. Several business owners report that once they began paying protection money, they never experienced crime. Jin family actually provided legitimate security. Personal life. Never married. No children. No known romantic relationships lasting longer than 3 months. Keeps emotional connections to minimum. Trust issues stem from childhood trauma. See below. Known weaknesses. No obvious vices. No gambling problem, no substance abuse, no financial difficulties, no sexual scandals. Maintains very private personal life. Few close associates. Most relationships are professional rather than personal. Primary vulnerability. Psychological trauma related to family tragedy. Family tragedy, 2002 when Ho-Seok was 17. The Jin family became target of hostile takeover, attempt by the Park crime family, now defunct. On the night of August 12, 2002, Park family forces attacked the Jin family home. Present during attack. Jin Tae-won father, age 45, killed. A Jin Ho-jin older brother age 20, severely injured later disappeared. A Jin Ji-woo younger sister age 15, targeted for abduction. A Jin Ho-Seok, age 17, witnessed entire event. Attack details. Park family had contracted with human trafficking organization to kidnap Ji-woo as leverage against Jin Tae-won. Father died protecting her from abduction. Shot 4 times while physically blocking traffickers' access to his daughter. Ho-Seok and Ho-jin managed to fight off attackers long enough for police to arrive. Jin family had law enforcement connections even then. Ji-woo was not physically harmed during attack. Aftermath. Jin Tae-won died at scene. A Jin Ho-jin disappeared 3 months later, believed killed in retaliation. A Jin Ji-woo developed severe PTSD and survivor's guilt. A Jin Ji-woo committed suicide April 2004, 2 weeks before Ho-Seok's 19th birthday. Ho-Seok's response, 2002 to 2005, spent 3 years systematically hunting down everyone involved in the attack. A 27 Park family members killed or imprisoned. 12 traffickers eliminated. 8 corrupt police officers exposed and jailed. A complete destruction of Park family criminal organization. All perpetrators accounted for except one. Kim Sang-woo, the man who ordered the attack and contracted the traffickers. Disappeared August 2002. Never found despite extensive search. Ho-Seok has maintained standing bounty for information on Kim Sang-woo. 1 billion won, $800,000 US. Bounty has been active for 13 years with no verified leads. Current operations, notable policy. Under Ho-Seok's leadership, Jin family has maintained absolute prohibition against human trafficking. This policy is non-negotiable and enforced with extreme prejudice. A 2008 shut down Chinese trafficking operation trying to use Jin territory, killed 3 organizers. A 2012 turned over North Korean smuggling ring to authorities despite potential profit. 2017, destroyed Russian prostitution ring, freed 23 women, killed ringleaders. A 2020, exposed politician with ties to trafficking, leading to arrest and disgrace. This policy makes Jin family unique among Korean organized crime groups and has earned grudging respect from some law enforcement officials who view them as lesser evil. Associates: Kang Min-suk, age 35, head of security, former special forces. Absolutely loyal Lee Dong-hyun, age 42, collections manager, handles protection money operations. Park Soo-jin, age 39, financial manager, handles legitimate business operations. Choi Young-ho, age 45, political liaison, manages government connections. Assets: primary residence, penthouse, Gangnam District, valued at 3 billion won. Secondary residence, villa, Jeju Island, valued at 2 billion won. Vehicles: Mercedes S-Class, BMW 7 Series, Lexus LS. Personal security: 12 full-time bodyguards, 30-plus associates on call. Intelligence assessment: Jin Ho-Seok is highly dangerous due to combination of intelligence, resources, and ruthlessness. However, psychological profile suggests potential leverage points. 1. Deep-seated hatred of human trafficking due to sister's trauma. 2. Values loyalty and honor. Responds positively to direct, honest dealing. 3. Respects strength and intelligence in opponents. 4. Maintains strict personal code that could be exploited by someone who understands it. Recommendation: direct confrontation likely to end badly. Better approach would be to demonstrate value and earn respect. However, subject responds poorly to deception or manipulation. Only genuine honesty likely to succeed. Zara read through the file 3 times, absorbing every detail, every nuance, every hint of the man behind the monster reputation. And slowly an idea began to form. Not a plan for revenge. Not a scheme for destruction. An opportunity. Because buried in all that information was something most people would miss. Jin Ho-Seok wasn't just a criminal. He was a man shaped by trauma, driven by a personal mission, operating according to a code that most people in his position would consider a weakness. She opened a new search window and started digging into Kim Sang-woo's disappearance. If Kofi's network hadn't found him in 13 years with a billion-won bounty incentivizing every informant in Asia, then he was either dead or extremely well hidden. But Zara had skills that Kofi didn't. She'd spent years finding people who'd erase their identities, who'd become ghosts. She knew the patterns, the psychology, the mistakes that people inevitably made when trying to stay hidden for long periods. It took her 6 hours, working through the night while Min-jun slept fitfully on a café chair he'd pushed together. She cross-referenced immigration records with business registrations, matched facial recognition databases against social media photos, tracked property purchases against family connections 3 generations deep. And finally, in the gray light of dawn, she found him. Kim Sang-woo had done everything right. Changed his name to Kim Dong-jin. Altered his appearance with plastic surgery. Subtle changes, just enough to throw off casual recognition. Moved to Busan, far from Seoul but not so far as to draw attention. Established a quiet, unremarkable life running a small import-export business specializing in auto parts. But he'd made one mistake. He'd kept in contact with his sister. Just once a year on her birthday, a wire transfer from a business account that looked legitimate but, when traced through shell companies and overseas banks, led directly back to him. Zara sat back, exhausted but satisfied. She had information that Jin Ho-Seok had been seeking for 13 years. Information worth far more than her café's protection money. Information that could change everything. The question was how to use it. She didn't get to decide on her own timeline. The next morning, barely 3 hours after she'd finally fallen asleep at her desk, Zara arrived at her café to find it completely destroyed. Every window shattered, glass glittering across the floor like malicious diamonds. Every table overturned and broken. The hand-carved legs snapped. Every chair reduced to kindling. The kitchen was gutted. Appliances pulled from walls, gas lines cut. Thank God not ignited. Her carefully organized spices scattered across the floor like colorful snow mixed with her shattered dishes. The walls had been spray-painted with crude threats in Korean and broken English. Last warning, go home African, next time you die. Her photographs, the ones of Lagos and Seoul, the visual bridge between her past and present, were torn down and shredded. Her textiles were slashed. Her menu boards were smashed. Everything she built, everything she poured her heart into lay in ruins. Min-jun stood in the middle of the devastation, crying openly. "Miss Zara, I'm so sorry. My cousin. He works for them. He warned me this was coming last night, but I was too scared to tell you. I thought if I didn't say anything, maybe they'd change their minds. Maybe they'd leave us alone. I'm so sorry." Zara surveyed the damage, her face expressionless. She'd learned in Lagos to never show emotion when emotion could be used against you. She'd seen worse destruction. Hell, she'd caused worse destruction when taking down trafficking operations. But this was different. This was personal. This was her dream, her redemption, her attempt at building something beautiful in a world full of ugliness. "How long has your cousin been informing on me?" she asked quietly, her voice flat and controlled. Min-jun's face crumpled further. "Since the beginning. He's the one who told them about the café when it first opened. He's the one who told them you refused to pay. He reports on our customers, our revenue, everything. Miss Zara, I didn't know he was giving them detailed information. I swear I didn't know until yesterday when he bragged about it. He thought I'd be impressed." Zara believed him. Min-jun was a terrible liar, and the guilt radiating off him was genuine and overwhelming. "Go home," she said. "Take the week off. Paid." "But Miss Zara, what are you going to do?" Zara pulled out her phone and dialed the number on Ho-Seok's business card, the one he'd left during his first visit. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting for this call. "That was fast," he said, his voice smooth and unsurprised. "I expected you to hold out longer. Most people take at least a month to break. We need to talk. In person. Just you and me, no bodyguards, no witnesses." "Why would I agree to that?" "Because I have information you want. Information worth far more than my café's protection money. Information you've been searching for 13 years without success. But I'll only share it face to face, and only if you come alone." A long pause. She could almost hear him thinking, calculating risks against potential rewards, weighing the possibility that this was a trap against the chance that she actually had something valuable. What kind of information? The kind that ends a 13-year search. The kind that closes a wound that's been bleeding since you were 17. The kind that's worth $1 billion bounty that's never been claimed. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, still controlled, but with an undercurrent of intensity that hadn't been there before. "Where? Your choice. But I come alone, you come alone. That's non-negotiable. Dongdaemun Design Plaza. The rooftop. 1 hour." He hung up without waiting for confirmation. Min-jun stared at her with wide, terrified eyes. "Miss Zara, you can't meet him alone. He could kill you. He could. He could have killed me last night when his men destroyed my café. He didn't. That means he's curious. And curiosity is leverage." She grabbed her bag and the folder containing Kim Sang-woo's information. "If I'm not back in 3 hours, call this number." She scribbled Kofi's contact information on a napkin. "Tell him what happened. He'll know what to do." This is insane. Zara looked around at the wreckage of her dreams, at 6 months of work reduced to rubble in a single night. "Maybe. But I didn't come this far, didn't survive Lagos and leave everything I knew. Didn't build this café from nothing, just to surrender now. I'm going to end this. One way or another." The Dongdaemun Design Plaza rooftop was deserted at midday. A sweeping expanse of futuristic architecture with curves and angles that defied traditional design. The view stretched across Seoul in all directions. Modern skyscrapers mixing with traditional Hanok houses, the old and new existing side by side in eternal tension. Zara arrived first, positioning herself with her back to the railing, exit routes mentally mapped, calculating angles and distances out of habit. The operative in her never truly slept, even after 5 years of trying to bury it. Ho-Seok arrived exactly on time, alone as promised. He wore casual clothes today, designer jeans and a black silk shirt, but he still moved with that same predatory grace, each step measured and purposeful. His eyes scanned the rooftop professionally, checking for threats, for witnesses, for ambush points. When he was satisfied they were truly alone, he stopped 10 feet away. Far enough for safety, close enough for conversation. You have 5 minutes, he said, his tone businesslike. Convince me this meeting was worth my time. Zara pulled out the folder and tossed it toward him. It landed at his feet with a soft thump that seemed loud in the open space. Kim Sang-woo, she said simply. She watched his body language shift, the sudden tension, the way his hands clenched, the way his breathing changed. The flash of something raw and painful in his eyes before his mask slipped back into place. It was the reaction of someone hearing a name they'd thought they'd never hear again. A ghost made suddenly solid. He picked up the folder slowly, as if it might explode, and opened it. Inside were photographs, recent ones, high-resolution, time-stamped. Documents proving identity through DNA comparison, fingerprint analysis, facial recognition metrics. Addresses, routine schedules, business records. Everything. Where did you get this? His voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. I have contacts. People who owe me favors from a previous life. People who are very, very good at finding things that don't want to be found. This is him? You're absolutely certain. The facial recognition match is 98.3%, accounting for plastic surgery alterations. The DNA comparison from family medical records, his sister's hospital files, is conclusive. Fingerprint analysis from his business license application matches archived prints from his original identity. That's Kim Sang-woo living as Kim Dong-jin in Busan. He's been there for 11 years. Small import, export business, quiet life, completely off everyone's radar. She paused. Until now. Ho-Seok stared at the photographs like they contained the secrets of the universe. His hands trembled slightly, the first crack in his controlled facade she'd seen. My father died protecting my sister from the traffickers this man sent. My brother disappeared hunting him. My sister killed herself because she couldn't live with the guilt. And he's been in Busan running an auto parts business. Sometimes the best hiding place is in plain sight. He changed everything that could be easily tracked, name, appearance, location, but he made one mistake. He maintained contact with his sister. Once a year on her birthday. A wire transfer that looks legitimate but traces back to him through enough shell companies to hide it from casual investigation. But not from you. I used to find people for a living. People who had every reason to stay hidden. People protected by governments, criminal organizations, witness protection programs. I was very good at it. Ho-Seok closed the folder carefully, as if it might shatter. Why? He asked, looking at her directly for the first time. Why give me this? Because I want you to understand something. I could have sold this information to your enemies. Could have used it to blackmail you. Could have done nothing and let you spend the rest of your life searching. But I didn't. Because unlike you, I don't make my living hurting people. I just want to be left alone. I just want to run my cafe and serve food and live a quiet life. Nothing is free. Especially not this. What do you want? Leave my cafe alone. Stop the harassment. Call off your men. Walk away and we never have to see each other again. You get the thing you've been searching for 13 years. I get peace. Fair trade. Ho-Seok studied her with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she held his gaze. Two predators assessing each other. Two survivors of different hells recognizing something familiar in each other's eyes. You researched me. Learned about my sister, about my father, about the worst night of my life. Figured out my weakness and exploited it. I learned about your pain, Zara corrected. There's a difference. And I'm not exploiting it. I'm offering you closure. Justice. The thing you've wanted for 13 years. That's not the same as exploitation. You know what I am. What I do. I know exactly what you are. I also know about your rule: no trafficking. No exploitation of the vulnerable. You're a criminal, but you have lines you won't cross. That's more than I can say for a lot of supposedly legitimate businessmen I've met. More than I can say for politicians and police officers and corporate executives who traffic in misery while wearing expensive suits and calling it business. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe that she understood the distinction. That she didn't see him as just another monster, but as someone operating according to a complex moral code. How do you know about trafficking? He asked suddenly. How do you know what it looks like from the inside? Zara hesitated. Then decided honesty was the only currency that would work with this man. Because I used to hunt traffickers. That was my job before I came to Seoul. I infiltrated networks, gathered evidence, got people out. I was good at it until... She stopped. Until my partner died in Lagos because I wasn't fast enough, wasn't careful enough. Until I learned that no matter how many people you save, you can't save everyone. Until the nightmares and the guilt made it impossible to continue. Understanding flickered across Ho-Seok's face. So you ran. Came to Seoul. Opened a café. Tried to pretend you were someone else. Tried to become someone else. Someone who created instead of destroyed. Someone who fed people instead of hunting them. But you're still that person. The hunter. The operative. Whatever you call it. You can't just turn that off. No, Zara admitted. You can't. I tried for 5 years. But when your men started threatening me, started destroying my cafe, that person woke up. And she remembered exactly how to fight back. They stood in silence for a long moment, the Seoul skyline stretching around them. Two people who understood violence and trauma in ways most people never would. I'll honor your request, Ho-Seok said finally. No more harassment. No more protection money. Your cafe is untouchable. Anyone who bothers you answers to me. That's all I wanted. But there's something else. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I need someone I can trust. Someone who doesn't fear me because they've seen worse. Someone who's proven they can get things done. Someone with skills beyond serving jollof rice. I told you. I know what you told me. But think about it. You have talents rotting away in that kitchen. Investigation, research, analysis, infiltration. You could do more. Be more. And you'd have my complete protection and resources. You could even continue running your cafe. I'll fund the repairs, the expansion, whatever you need. But you'd work with me on other matters. What kind of other matters? The kind that matter. Trafficking networks operating in my territory. Corrupt officials who take bribes and let monsters operate freely. Organizations that exploit the vulnerable while hiding behind legitimate facades. He paused. I may be a criminal, but I have standards. And I need help enforcing them. Why me? Because you're the only person in this entire city who had the chance to destroy me and chose not to. You could have taken that information to the Park family, the Choi organization, any of my enemies. Could have started a war that would have torn apart my organization and left me vulnerable. But you didn't. You came to me directly and offered a trade based on honor and mutual benefit. That kind of integrity is rarer than you think in my world. In any world. Zara wanted to say no. Wanted to take her piece and walk away. Wanted to go back to her simple life of recipes and customers and pretending her past didn't exist. But she'd been lying to herself. The past 5 years had been about running, not healing. About hiding, not rebuilding. And maybe, just maybe, there was a way to use her skills for something meaningful again. One job, she said finally, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. I'll do one job with you. If I hate it, if you try to control me or use me or cross the lines I set, we're done. Deal. Ho-Seok's smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes in a way that transformed his face from dangerous to almost handsome. Deal. He offered his hand. She took it. His grip was firm, warm, and carried the weight of an oath being made. Neither of them saw the telephoto lens pointed at them from a building across the street. Neither of them noticed Minjun's cousin, a man named Park Jae-sung, lowering his camera with a satisfied smile, already composing the message he'd send to multiple interested parties about this unexpected alliance. 3 days later, Zara's cafe had been completely restored. Not just repaired, transformed. New windows, reinforced and tinted for privacy. New furniture, higher quality than what she'd had before. New kitchen equipment, professional-grade appliances that she'd only dreamed about affording. Even her decorations had been replaced with perfect replicas, and in some cases improvements. Ho-Seok had been thorough. And fast. This is too much, she'd protested when she first saw it. It's an investment, he'd replied simply. In you. In us. In what we're building. Now she sat in his office, a penthouse suite in Gangnam with views across Seoul and security that rivaled government buildings, looking at the file he'd placed in front of her. Park Jin Ho, Ho-Seok said, his voice hard. runs a network of love motels and entertainment establishments across Seoul. On paper, everything's legitimate. In reality, he's trafficking women from Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe, promises them legitimate jobs, takes their passports, forces them into prostitution. Zara looked through the file. Photographs of young women, their eyes hollow and hopeless. Financial records showing payments to corrupt immigration officials. Testimony from women who'd escaped, too terrified to go to police who might send them back. Why hasn't he been arrested? Because he's protected. Pays off the right people, has connections to 2 politicians and a police captain. The system protects him because the system profits from him. And you want me to? Get inside. Gather evidence that can't be ignored or bought off. Find out who else is involved, the politicians, the police, the officials taking bribes. Get me everything I need to destroy his entire operation. Why not just kill him? That's what you do, isn't it? Ho-Seok's expression hardened. I'm not a mindless thug, Zara. I kill when necessary, but I prefer to be strategic. If I just eliminate Park, someone else takes over the network. But if I expose him publicly, destroy his political protection, make an example of him, that sends a message. That changes things systemically. Zara studied the file, her mind already working through approaches, possibilities, cover stories. How would I get inside? That's your expertise. You tell me. She thought about it for a few minutes, her old training kicking in. I'd pose as a potential investor. Someone with money looking to expand into the entertainment industry. Park is always looking for investors to help him expand operations. I'd need a false identity, financial backing that appears legitimate, and someone to vouch for me. I can provide all of that. How long do I have? As long as you need. But women are being exploited every day he operates. So faster is better. Zara looked at the photographs again, seeing herself in those hollow eyes. Seeing the women she'd failed to save in Lagos. Seeing the opportunity to do something that actually mattered. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. First, any women we find get safe passage out. No questions, no deportation, no charges. They get help, counseling, job training, whatever they need. Agreed. Second, when we take down Park, we take down everyone involved. The politicians, the police, all of them. No one walks away. That's my intention. Third, if at any point I think you're using me or these women for your own criminal purposes, I walk. And I take everything I've learned to the authorities. Ho-Seok leaned back, studying her with something like respect. You don't trust me. I trust that you hate traffickers. I don't trust that your methods align with mine. So yes, I need that insurance. Fair enough. Anything else? Yes. I want Minjun protected. His cousin is feeding information about me to multiple parties. I want him and his family safe. Consider it done. They shook on it again, and Zara felt herself crossing a threshold she'd sworn she'd never cross again. Back into the world of shadows and lies, of cover identities and dangerous games. But this time she told herself it would be different. This time she was doing it on her terms. It took 2 weeks to set up her cover identity. Lee Soo-jin, a Korean-American investor based in Los Angeles, looking to diversify her portfolio into Asian entertainment markets. Kofi had provided her with an ironclad background, social media presence going back 5 years, business registration in California, financial records showing substantial assets, references from legitimate businesspeople who'd been paid handsomely to vouch for her. Zara transformed herself physically. Designer clothes replacing her casual café wear, subtle makeup that made her look sophisticated rather than approachable, hair styled in a sleek bob that looked nothing like her usual curls, colored contacts to change her eye color. She studied Park's known associates, his business patterns, his personal preferences. And when she felt ready, she made contact. The meeting happened at one of Park's legitimate clubs in Gangnam. Expensive, exclusive, frequented by wealthy businessmen and tourists with money to burn. Zara arrived in a hired Mercedes, playing the role of successful investor with practiced ease. Park Jin-ho was in his 50s, expensively dressed, with a kind of practiced charm that made her skin crawl. He reminded her of Okafor in Lagos, the same dead eyes behind the smile, the same casual cruelty wrapped in pleasantries. Miss Lee, he said, shaking her hand with a grip that lingered too long. I've heard impressive things about your investment portfolio. Always wonderful to meet a Korean who's succeeded in America. I'm actually Nigerian Korean, Zara said, deciding that a version closer to truth would be easier to maintain. Born in Lagos, moved to the States in my 20s. But I'm looking to establish stronger connections to my heritage. Ah, fascinating. Africa is an interesting market. I've been considering expansion there myself. They talked business for an hour, Zara asking careful questions about his operations, his profit margins, his expansion plans. She played the role of interested but cautious investor, someone with money but also caution. I've heard rumors, she said carefully, watching his reaction, about some of your entertainment establishments. Rumors about special services. Park's smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. Rumors are just rumors, Miss Lee. But I believe in providing clients what they want. Within legal limits, of course. Of course. But hypothetically, if someone wanted to invest in more specialized operations, would that be something you'd be open to discussing? Hypothetically, Park leaned closer. I'm always open to discussions with serious investors who understand the reality of business in Asia. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. And just like that, she was in. Over the next 3 weeks, Zara infiltrated Park's network with a thoroughness that surprised even Ho-Seok. She documented everything. The women being held in locked apartments, the bribes being paid to immigration officials, the corrupt police officers who looked the other way, the politicians who received generous campaign donations in exchange for protection. She used hidden cameras, recorded conversations, copied financial records, gathered testimony from women brave enough to talk. She posed as a potential investor, a client, even briefly as a new worker to gain access to secure areas. And what she found made her physically ill. Park wasn't just running a prostitution ring. He was operating a sophisticated slavery operation. Women were being kidnapped from their home countries with promises of legitimate jobs. Their passports were confiscated upon arrival. They were forced to work off debts that magically kept increasing. Those who tried to escape were beaten, sometimes killed as examples to others. One night, Zara sat in her café after closing, reviewing footage she'd captured, and broke down crying for the first time since Lagos. The faces of these women, some barely 18, some in their 30s with children back home they were desperately trying to support, haunted her. Ho-Seok found her like that, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by evidence of horror she'd documented. I can't do this, she said, her voice breaking. Every time I talk to these women, every time I pretend to be considering investing in their misery, I feel like I'm betraying them, like I'm part of the system destroying them. He sat down across from her, not touching her but present in a way that felt grounding. You're the only one trying to save them, the only one with the skills and resources to actually do something. But how many will suffer while I gather evidence? How many more nights will they endure because I need to document everything perfectly? We move fast, we save some of them. We move carefully, we save all of them and destroy the entire network so it can't rebuild. Which would you prefer? She knew he was right, but it didn't make it easier. I met a girl today, she said quietly, 19 years old, from Vietnam. Thought she was coming to Seoul to work in a restaurant. Instead, she's been locked in a motel room for 3 months. Servicing 10 to 15 men a day. She cried when I talked to her because I was the first person who'd spoken to her like she was human in months. What's her name? Nguyen Thi Lan. Then we save Nguyen Thi Lan. And we save all the others. And we make sure Park Jin Ho and everyone who helped him pay the price. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Kong? I need a safe house prepared. Full security, medical staff on standby, counseling services. Multiple occupants, at least 20 to start. Yes, tonight. No, I don't care what it costs. Just do it. He hung up and looked at Zara. How soon can you get the women out? Tonight? That's too fast. We don't have everything documented yet. We have enough. You said it yourself, every day they suffer while we gather evidence. So we get them out tonight and we'll figure out the rest later. Tell me what you need. Zara felt something shift in her chest. This man, this criminal, this gangster, was willing to move heaven and earth to save women he'd never met because she'd asked. Because it was the right thing to do. I need transportation. Multiple vehicles unmarked. I need medical personnel ready for trauma victims. I need people who can speak Vietnamese, Thai, Russian, Tagalog. I need. Done. All of it. Give me locations and timing. They worked through the night, planning the extraction with military precision. Ho-Seok called in favors, mobilized his organization, transformed his criminal empire into a rescue operation. And at 3 a.m. they struck. Zara had memorized the locations of all Park's establishments where women were being held. 17 buildings across Seoul, varying levels of security, different numbers of captives. Ho-Seok's people hit them simultaneously. Zara led the team at Park's main facility, a love motel in Yeongdeungpo where 30 women were kept in locked rooms on the 3rd floor. She'd given Ho-Seok's security team the codes to the doors, the locations of guards, the timing of Park's security rotation. They went in fast and quiet, for guards were subdued before they could raise an alarm. Doors were unlocked. Women who'd been prisoners minutes ago were suddenly being led to freedom by strangers in black clothes speaking in urgent whispers. "It's okay," Zara said in English, then Vietnamese, then broken Russian, moving from room to room. "You're safe now. We're getting you out. No police, no immigration. Just safety." Some women didn't believe her. Some fought, thinking it was another trick. Some collapsed in relief. Some were too traumatized to react at all. Nguyen Thi-lan, the 19-year-old who'd cried, recognized Zara and grabbed her arm. "You came back. You actually came back. I promised you I'd help. I keep my promises." They evacuated all 30 women in 17 minutes. Medical personnel were waiting in the vehicles, along with translators and counselors. The women were taken to 3 different safe houses that Ho-Seok had secured, locations kept secret even from most of his organization. Across Seoul, similar rescues were happening at the other 16 locations. By dawn, 83 women had been freed from Park's network. But Park himself had escaped. Someone had tipped him off, probably the same leak that had been feeding information about Zara's activities. By the time Ho-Seok's people reached his penthouse, he was gone. "We'll find him," Ho-Seok promised, his expression dark. "He can't hide from me. Not in Seoul. Not anywhere." But Zara was more concerned about the women. She spent the next 3 days at the safe houses, helping coordinate medical care, speaking with trauma counselors, holding hands and offering comfort to women who'd been through hell. Many of them were too afraid to testify. Even with protection, even with promises, the fear ran too deep. But 7 women agreed to provide testimony, and Zara had documented everything else. The evidence package she assembled was comprehensive. Video footage, financial records, testimony, photographs, connections to corrupt officials. Everything needed to destroy Park's entire network. "It's time to release this," she told Ho-Seok a week after the rescue. "Get it to media outlets, to prosecutors who can't be bought. Expose everyone. Once we do this, there's no going back. You'll be a target. Park's organization, the officials he's protected, they'll come after you. They're already after me. At least this way, I'll have done something that matters." Ho-Seok studied her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're remarkable, Zara Imani. Or should I say Zara Okoro?" She froze. "How long have you known?" "Since before we met. I researched you the same way you researched me. Former intelligence operative, specialized in trafficking cases, presumed dead after Lagos incident. Resurfaced in Seoul under new identity. I've known all along." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because I understand why you ran. Why you wanted to be someone else. Hell, I'd probably do the same if I could." He moved closer. "But you can't run from who you are, Zara. You're a fighter. A protector. Someone who stands between the vulnerable and the monsters. That's not something you can turn off by serving jollof rice." "I wanted to try." "I know. But maybe there's another way. Maybe you don't have to choose between being a cafe owner and being an operative. Maybe you can be both." Zara wanted to argue, but she was exhausted and emotional, and the past month had stripped away her carefully constructed defenses. "I'm tired of fighting, Ho-Seok. I've been fighting my whole life." "Then fight beside someone who understands. Someone who has the resources to make a real difference. Someone who..." He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his face. Someone who needs you as much as you need purpose. There was something in the air between them, something that had been building since that first confrontation in her café. Mutual respect had evolved into understanding, understanding into trust, and trust into something neither of them wanted to name. This is complicated, Zara said quietly. Everything worth doing is complicated. They released the evidence 2 days later. Multiple media outlets received comprehensive packages simultaneously. Prosecutors known for integrity got copies. International human rights organizations got detailed reports. The story exploded across Korean media. Politicians' trafficking network exposed. Police captain charged with protecting slavery operation. Businessman flees as evidence reveals decade of exploitation. Park Jin-ho's empire crumbled in 72 hours. Politicians resigned. Police officers were arrested. Financial assets were frozen. The public outcry was deafening. But Park himself remained hidden. And someone was still leaking information. Zara realized who it was when she confronted Min-jun at the cafe. His cousin Park Jae-sung had been feeding information to multiple parties, to Park Jin-ho's organization, to rival Mafia families, to everyone who might pay for intelligence about Ho-seok's activities. I need to know something, she said to Min-jun. Did you know your cousin was taking photographs of me with Ho-seok? Did you know he was documenting everything? Min-jun's face crumpled. He told me he was just trying to protect our family, that if he didn't provide information they'd hurt us. But Miss Zara, I swear I didn't know the extent of it. I didn't know he was selling information to criminals. I thought he was just... I don't know what I thought. Where is he now? I don't know. He disappeared 3 days ago after the news broke. He's afraid of both sides now. Park's organization because he was also feeding information to Ho-seok, and Ho-seok's organization because he betrayed us. Zara felt a mixture of anger and pity. Tell me where he might go. Family, friends, anywhere he'd feel safe. Why? So you can tell Ho-seok? So he can kill him? No. So I can get to him first. Before Ho-seok's people do. Before Park's people do. Because despite everything, he's your family, and you've been loyal to me. I owe you that much. Min-jun stared at her like she'd spoken in a foreign language. After everything he's done, you'd save him? I'd give him a chance. The same chance someone gave me when I ran from Lagos. That's all any of us deserve. A chance to be better than our worst moment. Min-jun pulled out his phone with shaking hands and showed her a message. He sent this yesterday. Said he was hiding at my grandmother's house in Daegu. Said he was sorry. Zara forwarded the address to her phone. I'm going to get him. Tell him to stay put. And tell him that if he runs again, I can't help him. Miss Zara, why are you doing this? Because someone once told me that the difference between justice and revenge is what you do with your power. I'm trying to choose justice. Even when it's hard. Zara found Park Jae-sung hiding in a small house in Daegu. Exactly where Min-jun said he'd be. The man was 28 but looked 50, worn down by fear and guilt. He nearly collapsed when she walked through the door. Please, he begged. Please, I have money. I can pay you. Just don't tell them where I am. I'm not here to hurt you, Jae-sung. I'm here to help. But you need to tell me everything. Who else did you feed information to? What did you tell Park about the rescue operation? I didn't know about the rescue. I swear. I just sent him the photos of you and Ho-seok meeting. I told him you were working together. I didn't know what he'd do with that information. But he knew we were coming for his operations. Someone warned him. That wasn't me. That was... He stopped, fear crossing his face. Who, Jae-sung? Who else is leaking information? One of Ho-seok's inner circle. Someone high up. They approached me months ago. Wanted me to provide information about Ho-seok's activities. Said they were planning to take over his organization. I took their money because I was desperate, but I never gave them anything important until... Until when? Until they threatened Min-jun. Said they'd hurt him if I didn't tell them about the rescue operation. So I did. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Zara's blood ran cold. Someone inside Ho-seok's organization was planning a coup. Someone who'd used Jae-sung as a pawn, who'd deliberately sabotaged the rescue operation, who'd probably warned Park to escape. Who was it? Give me a name. I never met them directly. All contact was through burner phones and encrypted messages. But they knew everything about Ho-Seok's operation. Everything. Details only someone close to him would know. Zara pulled out her phone and called Ho-Seok. We have a problem. A big one. Someone in your inner circle is planning to betray you. I'm listening. She explained everything Jae-sung had told her, watching Ho-Seok's expression darken through the video call. It has to be someone with access to everything. Someone you trust completely. That's a very short list. Kang Lee Donghyun, Park Soo-jin, Choi Young-ho. My 4 lieutenants. I've known them all for years. One of them is planning to destroy you. We need to find out which one before they make their move. Leave Jae-sung there. I'll send people to secure him as a witness. And Zara. His expression was grave. Watch your back. If they're coming for me, they'll come for you too. You've become too important to my operations. After she hung up, Jae-sung looked at her with desperate hope. What happens to me now? You're going to tell everything you know to Ho-Seok's people. You're going to help us identify the traitor. And if you do that, if you help us stop whatever's coming, I'll do everything I can to get you and your family somewhere safe. New identities, new life far from Seoul. But you have to be completely honest. No more lies, no more playing both sides. Understood. Why are you helping me? After everything I've done. Zara thought about Chaik dying in her arms in Lagos. About the women she'd saved and the ones she hadn't. About all the choices between revenge and redemption she'd faced over the years. Because someone once gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve it. Because I'd rather create one more person trying to be better than create one more victim of circumstance. And because your cousin Minjun has been loyal to me when he didn't have to be. I'm doing this for him, not for you. Don't make me regret it. Back in Seoul, Zara and Ho-Seok set a trap for the traitor. They created a fake operation. A plan to move a significant amount of money through a specific bank account at a specific time. They shared different details with each of the 4 lieutenants, subtle variations that would identify which version leaked. Kang was told the transfer would happen at 3 p.m. through Shinhan Bank. Lee Donghyun was told 4 p.m. through Hana Bank. Park Soo-jin was told 5 p.m. through Woori Bank. Choi Young-ho was told 6 p.m. through Kookmin Bank. Then they waited. The next morning, they received intelligence that Park Jin-ho's remaining associates were planning to intercept a money transfer at 5 p.m. at Woori Bank. Park Soo-jin, the financial manager, the woman who'd been with Ho-Seok for 8 years, who'd helped build his legitimate business empire, who he'd trusted with his most sensitive financial operations. I can't believe it, Ho-Seok said, staring at the evidence. Soo-jin has been with me since the beginning. She saved my life once, took a bullet meant for me. Why would she betray me now? Zara reviewed Soo-jin's file again. Maybe she didn't start wanting to betray you. Maybe someone got to her. Threatened her, bribed her, blackmailed her. We need to confront her carefully. If we handle this wrong, she could warn whoever she's working with. They brought Park Soo-jin to a private meeting, using the excuse of discussing new business ventures. She arrived looking calm and professional, no hint of guilt or fear. Soo-jin, Ho-Seok said carefully, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. You know you can always trust me. Can I? Because someone close to me has been leaking information. Someone who knew about the Park Jin-ho operation. Someone who warned him we were coming. And the evidence points to you. Her composure cracked just slightly. That's ridiculous. I would never. We set a trap, Zara interrupted. Told you and 3 others different information. Your version is the one that leaked. Care to explain that? Park Soo-jin's face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, resignation. Finally, she slumped in her chair. They have my daughter. What? 3 months ago, Min approached me. Showed me photos of June at school, at her piano lessons, at the park with her friends. Said they'd kill her if I didn't cooperate. I didn't want to betray you, Ho-Seok. You've been like family to me. But she's my only child. What would you do? Ho-Seok's expression softened slightly. Who has her? Where is she? I don't know. They moved her somewhere after the first week. They send me proof of life videos every few days. She's alive but terrified. They said if I helped them take over your organization, they'd return her safely. If I refused or told you, they'd kill her. Zara leaned forward. Who are they? Who's behind this? I don't know names. Just a voice on the phone. But based on what they know about Ho-Seok's operations, it has to be someone with deep connections. Someone who knows everything. Or someone working with one of my enemies, Ho-Seok said grimly. The Choi organization has been wanting to expand into my territory for years. This would be their style. Use someone close to me, exploit their weaknesses. Can you help me get her back? Soo-jin looked at them with desperate hope. I know I've betrayed you. I know I don't deserve your help. But please. She's only 13 years old. She doesn't deserve to pay for my mistakes. Zara looked at Ho-Seok, seeing him wrestle with conflicting emotions. Betrayal. Anger. But also understanding. Also empathy. We'll get her back, Zara said, making the decision for both of them. But you have to tell us everything. Every contact, every instruction, every piece of information you've passed along. No more secrets. Over the next hour, Park Soo-jin revealed everything. The kidnapping had happened 3 months ago, right before Zara had entered the picture. She'd been feeding information gradually, trying to delay as much as possible without endangering her daughter. The rescue operation against Park Jin-ho had been the first time she'd leaked critical operational details. They wanted me to sabotage the whole thing, she said, tears streaming down her face. To give Park enough warning to escape with evidence we could use against him. But I couldn't. Those women. I have a daughter. I couldn't let them suffer just to save mine. So I only told Park enough to escape himself, hoping you'd still succeed in freeing the victims. That's why the rescue worked, but Park got away, Zara realized. You were trying to split the difference. Save the women but also follow their orders enough to keep your daughter alive. I'm so sorry. I've been living in hell for 3 months. Ho-Seok's expression was unreadable. The next contact with them, when is it? Tonight. They're supposed to call with new instructions. Good. When they call, you're going to do exactly what they say. But you're going to be wearing a wire and we're going to be tracking the call. We're going to find your daughter, Soo-jin. And then we're going to destroy whoever took her. The call came at midnight. A distorted voice giving Soo-jin instructions for the next phase of the betrayal. She was to transfer 50 billion won from Ho-Seok's accounts to a series of shell companies, effectively bankrupting his legitimate business empire. While Soo-jin pretended to comply, Zara and Kang's tech team traced the call. It bounced through multiple servers, but they eventually tracked it to a warehouse in Incheon. Ho-Seok mobilized his forces immediately. 20 of his best people armed and ready. But he pulled Zara aside before they moved. You don't have to come. This is going to get violent. Those people took a child to use as leverage. I'm coming. They hit the warehouse at 2 a.m. The resistance was lighter than expected. Only 6 guards, easily subdued. Inside, they found June locked in a small room, terrified but physically unharmed. Soo-jin collapsed when she saw her daughter, holding her and sobbing apologies while the girl cried in confusion and relief. But the mastermind behind the kidnapping wasn't there. Instead, they found Lee Dong-hyun, Ho-Seok's collections manager, bound and gagged in another room. What the hell? Kong cut him free. Boss Lee is here. He's been held captive. Lee Dong-hyun was beaten and exhausted, but alive. It was Choi, he gasped. Choi Young-ho. He's been planning this for over a year. He's working with the Choi organization, they're his cousins. He's been feeding them information, setting up this coup. He took Soo-jin's daughter to force her cooperation. He kidnapped me 2 days ago when I started asking too many questions. Ho-Seok's face went pale. Where is he now? Your penthouse. He said something about finishing it tonight while you're distracted here. Boss, it's a trap. This whole thing was designed to get you away from your stronghold. They raced back to Seoul, but they were too late. By the time they arrived, Choi Young-ho had cleaned out Ho-Seok's safe, stolen critical documents and flash drives containing information on every illegal operation, every dirty secret, every piece of leverage Ho-Seok had accumulated over the years. And he'd left a message spray-painted on the wall in Ho-Seok's office. The old king is dead. Long live the new king. He's going to use that information to destroy me, Ho-Seok said, his voice hollow. Every politician I've paid off, every police officer who's looked the other way, Every criminal I've partnered with, he can expose all of it. Or he can use it as blackmail to take over my entire organization. Then we find him before he can do either, Zara said firmly. We have something he doesn't expect. What's that? Me. He doesn't know my real background. Doesn't know what I'm capable of. He thinks I'm just a cafe owner who got lucky infiltrating Park's organization. He's underestimated us. That's his mistake. Ho-Seok looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Why are you still here? You could walk away from all of this. Go back to your cafe, your quiet life. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I chose to work with you. The moment I saw those women suffering and decided to do something about it. I don't abandon people, Ho-Seok. It's my biggest weakness and my greatest strength. Something passed between them, a recognition of partnership, of trust, of something deeper neither was ready to name. Then let's go hunting, Ho-Seok said. Finding Choi Young-ho took 3 days of intensive investigation. Zara used every contact she had, every skill she'd learned. Kofi's network in Ghana. Her old intelligence contacts in Africa. Even some careful inquiries to legitimate law enforcement. They finally tracked him to a luxury hotel in Busan, meeting with leaders of the Choi organization to finalize the coup. Ho-Seok wanted to go in with overwhelming force, but Zara convinced him to try something different. Let me talk to him first. Alone. That's insane. He'll kill you. No, he won't. He'll want to gloat. Want to explain how clever he's been. Men like him always do. And while he's talking, I'll be recording everything. Getting evidence we can use not just against him but against the Choi organization. We can turn this betrayal into an opportunity to take down a much bigger enemy. It was risky, possibly suicidal. But Ho-Seok trusted her judgment enough to agree. Zara walked into that hotel meeting wearing a wire and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Because she had. Miss Lee, Choi said, using her cover name from the Park investigation. Or should I call you Zara? Or perhaps Zara Okoro, former intelligence operative? I've done my research too. Clearly not well enough, or you'd know that walking into a room with me unarmed was a mistake. Choi laughed. You think I'm afraid of you? You're one woman. I have 12 men in this building. You're not walking out of here. Maybe. But before anything happens, I think you should know that everything you're saying is being recorded and transmitted in real time. And that building across the street? The one with the perfect sight line to this window? That's where Ho-Seok is positioned with a sniper rifle. So yes, maybe your men kill me. But you die first. Guaranteed. Choi's confidence wavered. You're bluffing. Am I? Wave at the window. See what happens. He didn't wave. Instead, he glanced at his associates, leaders of the Choi organization who suddenly looked much less confident about their alliance. Here's what's going to happen, Zara continued. You're going to return everything you stole from Ho-Seok. You're going to provide testimony about your cousin's organization, their operations, their connections, everything. And in exchange, you get to live. You get to disappear with enough money to start over somewhere far away. Or, she smiled coldly, we do this the hard way. The hard way. The way where I release evidence of your betrayal to every criminal organization in Seoul. Where they learn you can't be trusted. Where you become a target for everyone. Where you spend the rest of your short life looking over your shoulder, wondering when the knife will come. Your choice. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of the Choi organization leaders stood up. This alliance is over, he said, glaring at Choi Young-ho. We were told Ho-Seok was weak, vulnerable, ripe for takeover. We weren't told his new partner was Zara fucking Okoro. Do you have any idea who she is? What she's done? She took down the Okafor network in Lagos. The Kenyatta operation in Nairobi. The Rostov trafficking ring that 3 governments couldn't touch. She's a legend in certain circles. And you brought her into this situation without warning us. He shook his head. We're out. And Choi? You're on your own. They walked out, leaving Choi Young-ho alone with Zara and his dawning realization of how badly he'd miscalculated. You were right about one thing, Zara said quietly. I am Zara Okoro. And that means I've survived situations much worse than this. So let's talk terms. Zara's Cafe had become the most successful restaurant in Itaewon. expanded into 3 neighboring buildings, always full, with reservations booked weeks in advance. But that was just the front. Behind the scenes, she and Ho-Seok had built something unprecedented. A criminal organization that actually made the world better. They targeted traffickers, corrupt officials, organizations that preyed on the vulnerable. They rescued victims, provided resources for recovery, used their considerable power and connections for something that actually mattered. It wasn't perfect. They still operated outside the law, still did things that couldn't be justified in court. But they saved lives, changed lives, made a difference. Park Jin-ho had been found 3 months after his escape, arrested by international authorities with evidence Zara had carefully leaked to the right people. He was awaiting trial on trafficking charges in 7 countries. Choi Young-ho had disappeared, his whereabouts unknown even to Kofi's extensive network. The Choi organization had collapsed after the betrayal became public. Park Soo-jin was back working for Ho-Seok, her daughter safe, her loyalty proven through the crucible of impossible choices. She'd earned her redemption the hard way. Min-jun ran the café now, having proven himself capable of far more than anyone expected. His cousin Jae-sung had been relocated to Singapore with a new identity and a job with Kofi's network, trying to earn his own redemption. And Zara had finally found a balance between her past and her present, between the operative she'd been and the person she wanted to become. She stood in her café one evening after closing, looking at the photographs on the wall. Still Lagos and Seoul, still 2 worlds trying to coexist, when Ho-Seok walked in. "I have something for you," he said, handing her an envelope. Inside was a report on the Okafor network, the one that had killed Chaik, the one that had broken her 5 years ago. It had been dismantled piece by piece over the past 6 months. Every member arrested or eliminated. Justice finally for her fallen partner. "How?" she whispered. "I have resources. And I thought you deserved closure." He paused. "The last member of the network is in custody. They're asking if you want to be involved in the questioning." Zara thought about revenge, about justice, about the difference between the two. "No," she said finally. "I don't need to face them. I just needed to know it was over. That Chaik's death wasn't meaningless." "It wasn't. You've saved hundreds of people since then. Maybe thousands if you count ripple effects. That's his legacy living through you." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 people who'd found partnership in the strangest circumstances. "There's something else," Ho-Seok said, his voice careful. "This thing between us. This partnership. It's become more than that. For me anyway." Zara's heart raced. "Ho-Seok, I know it's complicated. I know I'm a criminal and you're trying to be better. I know we come from different worlds with different rules. But somewhere along the way, you became the most important person in my life. And I needed you to know that." She thought about all the reasons this couldn't work. The danger, the complications, the fundamental impossibility of a relationship built on crime and redemption. Then she thought about how he'd mobilized his entire organization to save women he didn't know. How he'd trusted her judgment over his own instincts. How he'd helped her find closure for trauma that had haunted her for years. "It's complicated," she said finally. "Everything worth doing is complicated." She smiled, recognizing her own words thrown back at her. "I guess we're doing this then? Unless you can think of a reason why we shouldn't?" "I can think of about 50 reasons. But I can also think of one reason that outweighs all of them. I trust you. And I never thought I'd trust anyone again after Lagos." He stepped closer, his hand finding hers. "Then we figure it out together. Like everything else." "Together," she agreed. As they stood in her café, surrounded by the evidence of dreams rebuilt and lives transformed, Zara Imani felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Not naive hope that everything would be easy, but earned hope that came from surviving the worst and choosing to keep fighting anyway. Hope that came from finding partnership with someone who understood both her strength and her scars. Outside, Seoul's lights flickered in the darkness. Inside, an African woman and a Korean gangster made plans to change the world, one impossible mission at a time. Because Zara had learned something important. You didn't have to choose between who you were and who you wanted to be. You could be both. You could fight monsters while serving jollof rice. You could be a warrior and a healer, a survivor and a savior. You could be complicated, You could be contradictory. You could be human. And that was enough. 3 weeks later, Zara received an email from an unknown sender. No message. Just a single attachment. When she opened it, her blood ran cold. A photograph. Taken recently, judging by her clothes. Her walking into her café. But someone had drawn a red circle around her face. And written below in English. "We know where you are, Imani. Lagos remembers. We're coming." It was signed with a symbol she recognized immediately. The mark of the Okafor network. But that was impossible. The network had been destroyed. Every member arrested or eliminated. Ho-Seok had confirmed it personally. Unless they hadn't gotten everyone. Unless there was a piece of the network that had been hidden even from Kofi's intelligence, even from Ho-Seok's investigation. Unless her past wasn't finished with her after all. She showed the email to Ho-Seok, watching his expression harden. "This is a threat," he said. "This is a promise," Zara corrected. "They're not asking for anything. Not demanding anything. Just telling me they know where I am. That they're coming for me. Then we prepare. Whatever's coming, we face it together." That was the deal. Zara looked at this man who'd started as her enemy and become something she'd never expected. Her partner, her equal, possibly her love. The man who'd somehow turned her cafe into a fortress, and her second chance into something worth fighting for. Together, she agreed. But as she said it, she felt the old familiar weight settling on her shoulders. The weight of unfinished business. Of debts unpaid. Of a past that refused to stay buried. She thought she was done running. Thought she'd finally found peace. But the truth was, some battles never end. They just pause, waiting for the right moment to resume. And Zara Imani's battle with Lagos, with the organization that had killed Chaik, with the ghost she'd been running from for 5 years, was about to begin again. Only this time she wouldn't be alone. This time she had resources, allies, and someone fighting beside her who understood what it meant to wage war in the shadows. This time she was ready. To be continued.